Work on the largest road improvement scheme in Britain, the new A1 motorway, came to a sudden standstill when engineers unearthed the remains of an amazing Iron Age burial site almost 2,500 years old. Archaeologists called in to investigate the site in West Yorkshire in the north of England were stunned to discover evidence of one of the rarest and most intriguing rituals of the time, a chariot burial.
It was probably well into the second week before we could actually say this is definitely a chariot, and it's definitely an intact chariot, and it's definitely the best preserved that's ever been excavated in the country. So it was fantastic.
There have only been 19 other chariot burials excavated in Britain, and this, the 20th, is potentially one of the most unusual and revealing.
Well, it's a uniquely important burial because we have the chariot intact in the grave, not dismantled, but absolutely as it was when it was driven. And then inside it, the well-preserved body of whoever was driving it. And then alongside hundreds and hundreds of animal bones.
It's absolutely one of the most important sites that's come up in my lifetime. All this evidence is going to really revolutionise how we look at this sort of burial.
The area around Ferrybridge in West Yorkshire is a known site of archaeological interest with Bronze Age archaeology previously found. So as the work began on the extension of the A1 motorway, a careful eye was being kept out for possible discoveries. When workers unearthed a thin strip of metal, independent specialists from the Oxford Archaeology Unit were called in immediately. What they found was of international significance. Professor Miranda Oldhouse Green, a specialist in the Iron Age, is on her way to the site of the chariot's discovery near Ferrybridge.
Well, this is really exciting because it's one of the very few Iron Age burials that we know about. For the most part, it seems that Iron Age people didn't bury their dead in formal ways. And we've got one of the very few formal burials here. And not only that, but it's a chariot burial, and chariot burials are so rare in Britain or the continent, and most of them are found in East Yorkshire rather than West Yorkshire, which is where we are now, and the vast majority have been dismantled before burial. This one is virtually unique and it's intact, just as the chariot would have been when it was driven up to the burial site with the body intact with it, so really exciting find.
Miranda is taken to the burial site by Blaise Viner. As an archaeologist working with the Highways Agency, he was one of the first on the scene.
Well, I would say it's probably about here.
About here.
About here.
So we're actually standing on the site
we are.
of
what turned out to be a chariot burial.
You must have been absolutely gobsmacked by that.
Well, yes, I was certainly surprised. Yes. I mean, I've worked up here for 25 years or so, and I'd never seen one of these. So it was a bit hard to suppress the potential excitement.
So once it was excavated, what could you actually, if we were standing here, looking down at the excavation, what would we have seen?
That's what it looked like during excavation. You could see the dark mark of a small ditched enclosure, and then here, the actual site pretty well as excavated, with the wheels of a chariot there and the skeleton there, and this pole of the chariot extending up to where the yoke and the turret rings are. The entire chariot was there.
Not dismantled, just
not dismantled,
ground.
And I think not disturbed either.
No.
So you can actually see the outline there of the base of the chariot with the skeleton lying on top of it.
And you can really imagine it, can't you? The thing being trundled to the side.
Yeah.
There he is, sort of lying in straight on top.
Blaise points out something else around the burial pit that would bring about a lot of intrigue.
I suppose the most interesting thing was the amount of bone that we found in the top of the ditch that surrounded this central burial.
And when you talk about lots of bone, how much bone?
A lot of bone, but Iron Age burials in Yorkshire do tend to be accompanied by bone, but usually only small, the odd butcher's offcut, as it were.
And it's normally pig and sheep, isn't it?
That's
it's
right,
not
yes.
normally cattle.
Not usually cattle, and nothing like the sheer number of bones that you could see in the top of this ditch.
The number of bones found in the ditch surrounding the burial pit amounted to over 200 individual cattle. this would prove to be hugely significant.
Clearly we've got a very strange burial here. Somebody who was buried in a very spectacular way, with great pomp and ceremony and so on. Not only that, but huge heaps of animals killed and buried alongside this person. We would expect somebody like this to be a great warrior, perhaps, but was he? We're not sure. We don't even know whether this person was male or female.
Not all chariot burials are male. One of the most recent comes from a village in East Yorkshire with a rather unusual female burial. And we already know from the Romans about the existence of female warriors, the most legendary of which is Boudica, who's also quite likely to have been buried in her chariot. So Miranda is keen to find out the gender of the ferry bridge skeleton. She travels down to Oxford, where Angela Boyle, an expert in human remains, has begun the painstaking analysis of the bones. Unfortunately, vital parts of the skeleton, including the skull, have been badly damaged in the ground.
I've not had a great deal of luck gluing the bits back together.
Which were the worst affected bits?
The facial area.
Right, so it's sort of here, around the eyes.
Precisely.
Although some of the facial structure has been destroyed, enough was left intact to give Angela the information she needed.
Age and sex fairly straightforward. Adult male, about 30 to 40. Height 5'9". Very, very little in the way of evidence for disease. Great teeth. No decay there at all.
And we're quite sure it's male.
Positive, he's male, yes. The appearance of the pelvis is definitively male. This is a nice masculine jaw.
Firm chin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's really, quite a good, maybe handsome specimen, and driving his own equivalent of a Ferrari or Lamborghini.
Absolutely, yeah.
So really quite a catch.
Yep.
His perfectly preserved teeth could indicate that he had a healthy diet. But no indications of serious or fatal injuries or signs of any disease can be found on the bones, which leaves little for Angela to go on for cause of death.
We very rarely are in a position where we can determine cause of death. You're only seeing the bones, and in order for bony change to occur on the skeleton, it has to occur over a long period. Most people would have died of colds and flus and viral things. Trauma, you do see, but we've not got any evidence of that, with the possible exception of the spine. And this is a feature that's known as Schmorl's nodes.
So this is the lower part of the spine, and you've got some...
You can just make out a little indentation.
Yeah, sure. Would it have caused him any discomfort?
Average aches and pains, I think, really. Like, I mean, we all get.
Although there is no obvious reason for his death, accurate radiocarbon dating of the skeleton has pinpointed exactly when he lived, around 300 years BC. Miranda travels back up north to Yorkshire to meet Sonia O'Connor, a conservation expert based at Bradford University. She was part of the dig team at Ferrybridge and helped preserve and analyse all the separate parts of the chariot that were found in the burial mound. One of her most important tasks at this excavation was to oversee the lifting of the wheels intact from the ground. Using a mixture of fine plaster bandage, the wheels were carefully protected in the ground before any lifting could begin. As there is a lot of metal left in them, they have been protected with bandages until further examination can begin.
So Sonia, this obviously is one of the wheels. I mean, how exciting just to see it sitting there.
Isn't it? Yes. This is the west wheel. This is the second one that we excavated, and it's absolutely fantastic. There's quite a lot of metal left in there, and a lot of information relating to how it was made and perhaps whether or not it was worn.
Some of the metal objects that were examined were intriguing.
If we look here, we've actually got the nave hoop from this wheel. And you can see here, it's actually an iron band on the hub with a copper alloy sheath on the outside. And here you can just see the end of this decorative piece. And the decoration's quite unlike anything we expected for a vehicle of that sort of period.
That's
And,
quite unusual,
it
isn't it?
is very unusual.
If these tiny pieces of metal are so unusual for that period, they may help the experts to understand more about the person. Could this be a clue that the person was a foreigner? The experts are hoping that further analysis will reveal just where they came from and perhaps lead them to a more concrete idea of who the charioteer was.
We had hoped that this was going to turn out to be a knife or a spearhead or something like that, because we were expecting
A warrior burial.
a warrior burial. We were
Yeah.
expecting some weaponry.
In order to find out if this is a weapon, Sonia uses a technique that she herself has pioneered, using radiographic imaging or X-rays to study archaeological artifacts, particularly metal.
I've X-rayed it and I can tell you it's not a knife at all. It's quite a highly decorated piece of iron with a sort of U-shape section to it. And I think in here we've got mineralised remains of something like wood.
So there are no weapons present in this burial. The notion that he might be a great Iron Age warrior is looking less likely, but still can't be ruled out altogether. Further excitement was created when even more well-preserved pieces of metal were found on the body itself.
And I think this is one of the most interesting objects, Miranda.
It looks like nothing on earth.
It does now. It's upside down, of course, because I had to lift it in a block of soil. But I have X-rayed it, and it's quite a surprise inside. It's actually an involuted brooch, but I have no idea yet what this material is. As you can see, it's very, very white, and that's because it has absorbed all the X-rays that have passed through it. A metal, perhaps gold, perhaps silver, perhaps lead, or perhaps it's actually a glass with a very high lead content.
Oh, yes, it could be that, couldn't it?
Sonia's use of radiography imaging enables her to see and scrutinise the finest details of the metal objects found alongside the man with the chariot. But does this help to understand who he was?
He's obviously of high status. On the other hand, the finds here are not as rich and highly decorated as some we've had from other chariot burials. But who's to say it isn't a lot to do with taste as much as anything?
So who is our charioteer? A man of high status? A religious leader or chieftain? The pathology points to a healthy individual, but grave goods indicate that he was probably not a warrior. However, Miranda is given some information on the bones that were found around the man's burial pit that turns her investigation on its head.
That's amazing, that really is. I mean, that's something I just didn't expect at all. You know, the perspective you put on it is just opens up so many new areas for interpretation.
Archaeologist Miranda Oldhouse Green is on an investigation. She's putting together the pieces of forensic evidence she's so far gathered to try and find out the identity of the Iron Age man found buried with his intact chariot. She's arranged to meet Dr. Melanie Giles, an archaeologist who specialises in the study of chariot burials.
Presumably, I mean, this is exactly how it would have been put in the pit in the ground, do you think?
Yes, yeah, you get a real sense of the size
Yeah.
and the shape of it, and so much iron would have gone.
She's been working on other significant chariot burials found in East Yorkshire, one of which this reconstruction is based on. Miranda wants to know why the Ferrybridge chariot burial is different to all the others.
And one of the intriguing things about this burial is that the chariot itself has bits and pieces that are really quite old. They seem to be quite worn, they've been used, handed down, inherited. So it's probably a vehicle that the community owns itself. The decision to bury it with this particular individual is really very significant. It must mean that they were very well respected, a senior member of the community whose death was a real tragedy for that group.
There's another crucial difference between this and other burials, to do with the chariot itself.
The chariot is buried whole, and that's very unusual. We only have one or two other examples of that within Britain itself. In most of the chariot burials, the cart is taken apart before it's laid in the grave, but this, it's wheeled in whole and left in the grave.
Not only is the interment of the chariot peculiar, there is something unusual about the position of the body itself.
What about the position of the body? Again, he's different, isn't he, from the other chariot burials from Britain?
Yes, the way in which he was laid in the grave is quite unusual. Normally we see burials that are quite tightly crouched, and this burial is slightly more flexed. He's almost extended in the grave, laid out flat, yet his knees are drawn up a little bit. So it strikes us again as being subtly different from the rest of the burials in the East Yorkshire region.
The position of the body found in Ferrybridge is actually more similar to chariot burials in other parts of Europe, particularly in parts of France. So, was this man from another country?
It's possible that he is foreign and he is bringing this rite into the region. Perhaps, he's one of the first few people who introduce it into the area.
But who was this person within his community? How important was he?
Well, during the Iron Age, during this period, we're dealing with quite small social groups. So I don't think we're looking at a king, if you like. But certainly he's a senior male member of the community. He knows a lot, he's seen a lot. He's a very wise man, probably. And what he's gone through in his life, and perhaps even something in the manner of his death, has set him apart from the rest of the group. And it's led them to bury him in this manner.
After talking to Melanie, Miranda is almost certain that this is the burial of a very special individual, perhaps a religious leader, and perhaps not of local origin.
Well, this is a uniquely important find, partly because we've got the chariot buried absolutely intact, and we've got this well-preserved body of a man, well-nourished, somebody clearly physically important as well as perhaps intellectually important, and alongside that, hundreds and hundreds of animal bones, suggesting that something really ritually special was going on.
Miranda believes that feasting on a massive scale was held to celebrate the life and death of the unknown charioteer. Her next step is to find out more about the amount and type of animal bone excavated from the site. Field archaeologist Andy Bates specialises in the study of animal remains. His painstaking analysis of the bones found at Ferrybridge has uncovered some crucial information.
So one of the very exciting things about this site is the sheer amount of animal bone, isn't it? You're just putting out a small sample for us. So can you just sort of take me through what we're actually looking at here?
This is the material that was found in the central pit with the individual that was buried in there, and it was found by his left arm.
Right. And what is it exactly?
We have here the skull, part of the head, and also the jaw, and those two fitted together. And this one here is the very top vertebra.
Right, and what animal are we talking about?
And we're talking about a pig.
Right,
So
okay.
it's a pig, it's half a pig head, which has been cooked, and that was placed as a food offering to go with the individual.
Oh, I see. Right, so a kind of packed lunch for the afterlife, maybe?
That's it, yeah.
It's quite common for Iron Age burials to be found with small offerings of pig and sometimes sheep. What's more unusual is to find evidence of cattle, which were highly prized and therefore would be a great sacrifice. And even more unusual in this burial was the number of cattle involved.
We have around about, we think, just over 200 cattle.
But that's
slaughtered.
massive. That is a massive thing. I mean...
It is, yes. And we think this is one event.
But that's an enormous number, isn't it?
It is, yes. For a single slaughtering event, that's quite staggering, the amount of meat that would have been produced from that.
And the amount of people who must have been present to eat it.
Yes, or perhaps not all the meat was consumed. Perhaps it was more to do with the number of cattle that were slaughtered.
The slaughter of so many cattle in one event, some of them not for food but for show, would indeed be a major sacrifice and is another baffling aspect of this burial. However, the positioning of the bones is crucial. Only the remains of 1 or 2 cattle were found buried with the charioteer. The rest were buried in a circle surrounding him. The results of the carbon dating came back and provided an explanation.
Well, when we had the radiocarbon dates back, this material here turned out to be Romano-British, around about 200 AD.
Really?
So this is actually about 500 years between the deposit of the pig and the individual in the barrow and the deposit of this material within the ditch.
But that's staggering, because I immediately assumed that everything would be the same kind of date, all 300 BC, but it's happening at the same site, but with a 500-year interval.
It is. It's certainly
weird.
Much later. The question is now as to whether it is a ceremonial activity taking place at the same location rather than the individual within the barrow. They're using the same space, the same area for their ceremonies, as these people buried their dead 500 years earlier. So.
That's amazing. That really is. I mean, that's something I just didn't expect at all.
Stunned by the discovery about the age of the animal bones, Miranda decides to go back to the burial site in West Yorkshire to revisit the original site of the burial. Here, she meets up with Dr. Timothy Taylor, an archaeologist who specialises in prehistoric societies.
So Tim, we've been looking at the cattle bones and all the other assemblages, and it seems to be that the cattle deposition might relate to a completely different episode in the site's history. So what's really going on here?
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, when you think of them coming here and killing all those cattle and eating them, it's really the end of the Iron Age period.
The period during the cattle feasting is an unsettling one in Romano Britain. Rome is pushing north and significantly putting roads through Britain. The shape and fabric of the country would be changing for the Iron Age peoples. This may explain why they came to offer their cattle, their prized possessions, to their gods, for guidance during this disorientating time.
And I think what that shows is that this was part of a ritual landscape, an Iron Age ritual landscape, that had a lot of time depth, that meant a lot to people over a whole series of generations. And I'm sure that they know that the Iron Age heroes of the past, their heroes in a sense, were there. We mustn't think, because they didn't have written history, that they didn't know exactly who was in that mound, and maybe it was that person they were making some appeal to in the face of the demise of their form of society.
So what we might think of as a final act, the burial of the man in the grave, was anything but that. It's a continuous story that goes on and on and on. It's a biography that keeps being added to, and people keep coming back, changing things. So the whole landscape has an ongoing dynamism which just never stops and never has an end.
Now, nearly 2,000 years on, the diggers are moving in, and the grave of the unknown charioteer is about to form part of a whole new landscape. But although his final resting place will soon be unrecognisable, the forensic study of his remains, his chariot and his possessions will carry on, and hopefully provide vital information as to who he was and where he was from.
He may have been a warrior, he may have been an elder, perhaps a priest. What we do know, what we can say with absolute certainty, is that here was somebody who was very, very special to his community. He was given a very formal, very ceremonial, high-profile, public performance burial. Although this is somebody who was buried in the middle of the Iron Age, at about 300 BC, in the middle of the Roman period, we have people revisiting the site. People were remembering, people were passing down from generation to generation how important this person and his grave was, coming back, feasting, remembering their dead, remembering the special place.